I'll start. Respected speakers, panelists, Professor Amitabha Ghosh, Shri Amitabha Bhattacharya, Professor Indranil Manna, Shri Gautam Ray, Professor Suman Chakraborty, session moderator, Professor Tathagata Roy, session organizers, Dr. Biman Ghosh, Dr. Parthopratim Chattopadhyay, Sri Shama Prasad Dotto. He is also our Alumni Day convener. Participants, good evening and good morning. It is our pleasure in inviting you all to join the panel discussion to be held today, 24th of December, 2022, on the by the Global Alumni Association, GAABESU, of Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology, Shibpur, erstwhile Bengal Engineering and Science University, Shibpur, and Bengal Engineering College, scheduled to be held tomorrow, Sunday, December 25th, 2022. Today's topic of panel discussion, Engineering and Engineering Education in 21st Century, Repositioning of IIEST. Just a brief, engineering provides solutions to a wide range of industries like medicine, space, entertainment, transport, etc. Every invention and its functioning depend on engineering in one way or the other. An ability to identify, formulate, and solve engineering problems, an understanding of professional and ethical responsibility, and ability to communicate effectively. Engineering education is the activity of teaching knowledge and principles to the professional practice of engineering. It includes an initial education, bachelor's or master's degree, and any advanced education and specializations that follow. As many experts have pointed out, 21st century engineers have to adopt interdisciplinary approaches to deal with critical challenges that they have to resolve. It is no longer possible for any discipline to address all problems, issues, or questions associated with these challenges single-handedly. GAABESU offers a network, social circle, a sustaining link to IIEST's various programs and faculty, a repository of resources, a source of intellectual inspiration through regional associations and shared interest groups. We have opportunity to engage with alumni, and decision makers in different countries and regions around the world. GAABESU intend to use collective passion, intellect, and drive of Bengal Engineering College and its successor institutions to enhance the status of our Indian Institute of Engineering and Science and Technology, to elevate it to one of the premier institutions for technical education and research in India. Thank you and enjoy today's session.
Thank you, Anjana ji. And now it's my turn to introduce the topic to you. My name is Biman Ghosh. I'm a 1981 metallurgy graduate. And this topic was chosen by discussing with many others. And I think this is very, very important in today's scenario. So engineering, economy, and environment are the three pillars of a technology-driven society, and our prosperity in 21st century depends on all of this. Engineering, encompassing food and water security, communication and mobility, products and services.
Louder, please, louder, louder.
Okay, I'm trying one more time. Engineering, encompassing food and water security, communication and mobility, products and services, disasters and public health challenges has been the prime contributor to the survival of humankind. And improving our quality of life solely depends on all of these ingredients. Now, the foremost engineering challenge for the world today is sustaining human development and preserving our planet. Recognizing the social, economic, and environmental dimensions of all these challenges, world leaders gathered together on the occasion of 70th anniversary of United Nations in 2015 to formulate a plan of actions for sustainable development in a declaration of intent in the historic document Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The UNESCO Engineering Initiative, aka UEI, was established in November 2011. Besides women and youth in engineering, as well as renewable and alternate energies, featured engineering education and sustainable engineering prominently as key areas addressed within the UEI. UNESCO defines sustainable engineering as the process of using resources in a way that does not compromise our environment or deplete the materials for future generations. India, being the home of almost 1/6 of the world population and with 65% of our population in working age group, certainly is a potential country for driving this strategic initiative towards 2030 for success. Our IIEST Shibpur, one of the former engineering institutions of the country, is going through a transformation in its infrastructural, administrative, and academic framework after the shift of its governance from the state to the central government. Unarguably, our institute today is poised to take a turn around focusing on the scope of engineering and engineering education envisioned in the horizon. Keeping this in view, in the occasion of our Alumni Day celebration, GAABESU, our alumni association, has dedicated the business meet to address the opportunities and challenges of transformation in engineering education in general and to craft the roadmap of IIEST to lead the transformation in the 21st century, which the Institute has demonstrated in the last century in paving the pathway of engineering education in the country. And we hope that we'll be able to take the challenge in the years to come and decades to come. Okay. So this is about the topic. And now let me introduce our distinguished panel that's going to take over this topic. And I'm going to start not in order of seniority, not in the alphabetical manner, but somebody who is all of us with respect to our core of the heart. And he is none other than Professor Amitabha Ghosh. He's an honorary scientist of Indian National Science Academy. He's an emeritus senior fellow of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation and a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences, India, of which he was elected a senior scientist Platinum Jubilee Fellow in 2012. We all know Professor Ghosh earned his bachelor's in 1962 and master's in 1964, subsequently earned his DPhil from University of Calcutta in 1969, all of this in mechanical engineering. And basically like our alma mater at that point in time under the aegis of University of Calcutta. He subsequently joined our faculty as a lecturer in mechanical engineering in May 1965 and later on joined IIT Kanpur in 1971, where he became a full professor in 1975. Professor Ghosh was appointed to the position of the director IIT Kharagpur in 1997 for a 5-year term and made contributions in various fields, including fundamental and applied research, technology development, administration, and social development. He has more than 56 years plus experience teaching, research, everything that we could encompass around engineering. And my advance apology that we cannot give any more than 30 minutes to give justice or to do justice to his experience and overall comment on this subject. Next, our Amitabha Bhattacharya, IAS, retired. He graduated from our mechanical engineering in 1971 and later on joined DCPL and basically like he was working in Patra Thermal Power Station and Bharat Aluminium Company. Later on, he joined our administrative service in 1975 and was allotted to the Andhra Pradesh cadre, where he served in various capacities as district magistrate, Director of Technical Education, Transport Commissioner, Irrigation Secretary, etc., etc. And he acquired direct experience in the fields of infrastructure and public administration. He had also served the Board of Governors of IIT Madras, that time now IIT Chennai during 1980 to 82. He had served with United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in its Delhi office as the Chief of Programs in the fields of energy environment between 1990 and 95. In the year 2000, he came to the Government of India as a Joint Secretary in the newly set up Department of Disinvestment, and before going back to the state of Andhra Pradesh again. He retired in 2009 from the Planning Commission of India in the rank of Principal Advisor in charge of Education and Culture, which is basically equivalent to the Secretary to the Government of India. To complete his 360-degree loop, he later served as a director and the head of the Delhi office of the DCPL. He is a fellow of the Institute of Engineers and has been its council member for 3 years. He also served as the vice president of the Consulting Engineering Association between 2013 and 2014. He has been awarded with the Distinguished Alumnus Award by our alma mater, and he now writes on civil services, public administration, and other issues of public interest for various national newspaper and journals. Next in order is Gautam Ray, my batchmate, alumnus of 1981 Electrical from our alma mater, who subsequently did his post-graduation in Electrical Power Systems in 1983. Currently serving as the Executive Director of CESC Limited, he is the President of the Power Group of RP Sanjeev Goenka Industries. He is responsible for the HR and administration for CESC. He established the Asia Institute of Power Management under CESC for imparting training in India and neighboring countries. He is the recipient of Energy Administrator of the Year Award from Association of Energy Engineers and recipient of Top Gear Award for Excellence in Performance, Outstanding Achievers Award from RPSG, former President, Calcutta Management Association, and he's also the President-elect, Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is currently the Chairman, HR and IR Committee of CII, and also a member of National HR and IR Committee of CII. He serves as a co-chairman of the Energy Committee of the Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Next, our Professor Indranil Manna, a J.C. Bose Fellow of Department of Science and Technology, currently the Vice Chancellor of BIT Meshra in Ranchi. He served as the Director of CSIR under CGC at CGCRI Lab in Kolkata during 2010 and 2012, before joining IIT Kanpur as the Director during 2012 and 2017. He is also an alumnus, graduated with Metallurgy in 1983, subsequently did his MTech from IIT Kanpur in 84 and PhD from IIT Kharagpur in 1990. He is an educationist and materials engineer with wide-ranging research interests. He is a fellow of all the National Academy of Sciences like INSA, IIEST, NASI, and Engineering INAE in India. He was a German Academic Exchange Service Fellowship recipient between 1988 and 90, and Humboldt Fellow in Germany in 2001 and 2. He is now the 14th President of our National Academy of Engineering since January 1, 2021. For the next 2 years, he is also serving and passionately involved in making the National Academy of Engineering a national agency for promoting engineering and technological self-reliance of India by translational research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Next, Professor Suman Chakraborty, who is a professor in mechanical engineering at the Mechanical Engineering Department of Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and he's also serving the institute as an institute chair professor. He is currently leading the School of Medical Science and Technology and Associate Dean of Sponsored Research and Industrial Consultancy at IIT Kharagpur. He was earlier the Indian National Academy of Engineering chair professor between 2014 and 16. He joined the institute in 2002 as an assistant professor and became associate professor in the year 2007 before becoming full professor in 2008. He graduated from the mechanical engineering program at Jadavpur University in 1996. He actually ranked first in GATE entrance examination in 1997. Subsequently, he joined IIEST for his master's study and received the gold medal and Senate commendation for outstanding performance in Masters of Engineering. He joined IISc in 2000 for his doctoral research, completed his PhD dissertation in about 1 year at the IISc. He received Best International CFD Thesis Award in 2002. And to add to his many accolades, he received the Santisharu Bhatnagar Prize and became the youngest fellow of the Indian National Academy of Engineering and fellows of the Indian National Science Academy, Indian Academy of Sciences, Indian National Academy of Sciences. And in addition of being the recipient of the Indo-US Research Fellowship, Scopus Young Scientist Award given by Elsevier, Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship in 2005, Young Scientist, Young Engineer Award from various national academies. So he has been bestowed with fellowships of American Physical Society, Fellowship of the Royal Society of Chemistry, and Fellowship of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. He was a visiting professor at Stanford University as well. So to have this distinguished panelist, we have none other than Professor Tathagata Ray, our distinguished alumnus from 1966 civil engineering. And Tathagata doesn't need an introduction to this audience. And we all know that he spearheaded the Metropolitan Transport Project or the Metro Rail project in Kolkata. He's a former professor of construction engineering at Jadavpur University. He led the department that he founded as the chair before transitioning fully into his political career. He was the 6th president of West Bengal State Unit of Bharatiya Janata Party from 2002 to 2006 and a member of the BJP National Executive Council from 2002 to 2015. He served as the governor of Tripura from 2015 to 2018 and the governor of Meghalaya from August 2018 to the end of his term in August 2020. He briefly had additional charge of the office of the governor of Arunachal Pradesh from July 2016 to August 2016. So you see that if I start talking about Tathagata and other panelists, this might consume the whole of our discussion. So without further ado, I give it to Tathagata, Professor Tathagata Ray, to moderate the session. Please. Tathagata, you are on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yes, please. Very good.
Very good. Thank you, Biman. And thank everyone for inviting me to be a moderator in this panel discussion.
Louder, please, louder.
Right.
Not
Sir,
audible.
I'll try to be as loud as possible. I am also an old man, not exactly. So I'll try to do my best. I think there might be some technical issues somewhere. The discussion, the subject that we have before us is engineering education in the 21st century and the repositioning of the Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology, Shibpur. Now, we have had recently a very not pleasant experience in that the ranking of our beloved institution has fallen to a very considerable extent. And that in particular has given rise to a need for repositioning of the institute in its proper place, in its place of glory, because it is the second oldest engineering institution in India after Roorkee. It did not become IIT because of a number of factors. And well, there it is. And now, as IIEST, we expect it, we want it, and we shall try for it to rise to the level of that it once enjoyed. Now, where are we? We are in how many years? 1956, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Bengal Engineering College. At that time, I had not even been admitted to the college. I was still in school. And this is, we are in now 2024. And over these years, we have unfortunately seen a downhill journey for our institution. So a repositioning effort is certainly called for. Second thing is, apart from the repositioning, we have to look at a wider compass, taking a wider view of things, we have to look at engineering education in the 21st century. Engineering education in the 21st century is something that I have dabbled in because I founded the Department of Construction Engineering in Jadavpur University in 1990 and ran it not right through as the head, but as a professor from 1990 till 2010, out of which the last 10 years were in the 21st century. So during this period, I had noticed certain things. The advent of computers in project management, generally until the 1970s, computers were something that most engineers outside computer science stayed away from. In the 80s, computers were gradually, with the launching of the IBM PC, computers were gradually coming, the engineers were gradually coming closer to computers. Then from PC, we went on to higher versions. And meanwhile, we graduated from MS-DOS to Windows. And now in this third decade of the 21st century, we have reached a stage when the stuff is absolutely beyond me. But it's being beyond me doesn't mean that it's beyond the younger people who are actually into this profession, both teaching and practicing engineers. And how this interaction is taking place is a thing that I would like to hear from the panelists. The other thing that I would like to hear, not that the panelists have to toe my line, they are pretty much free to speak as they are, but I'm simply expressing my personal desires that what I would like to hear from them is interaction between the profession, between practicing engineers and the teaching engineers or researchers. It is my impression that the interaction is not as much as I would have liked it to be, because this interaction, failing this interaction, the subject doesn't get its proper orientation. Engineering is particle physics or something like string theory, which would come into something kind of practical use some years later, decades later, perhaps. Engineering has to be put into action right now. So having said that, this is the second thing that I would like to hear. And apart from that, there should be any number of things that the panelists would like to speak on. We have a very distinguished panel, which is headed, if I may say so, which is headed by Professor Amitabha Ghosh, who is a multifaceted personality. I need not speak too much about him because Biman has already said so. Now I leave the floor to the panelists for beginning them. Biman, you tell me who should begin?
I think we get started with Professor Amitabha Ghosh.
Right. I completely agree.
Thank you, Tathagata. Can you hear me, all of you?
Yeah, sure.
Yes,
Loud and clear.
Okay, so a very good evening to my brothers and sisters of Bengal Engineering College fraternity, we call. Nowadays, of course, it has gone through various different names, but still, I think Bengal Engineering College appears to be the most commonly used name, starting from the bus conductors to even general public. So I think when I was invited to this program by Tathagata and Arthopratim Chattopadhyay, I found that the main concern is because of the gradual downward trend in our alma mater, which is a matter of concern to all of us. And I think to some extent, perhaps may not be completely, that has been the root cause of arranging this panel discussion on the eve of our annual day. And as you all understand, and also Tathagata mentioned, that the canvas you have chosen is very wide. And I think we will do justice that each individual person, rather than trying to cover everything, it will be better if we take some special issues which we are most closely familiar with for your consideration. I thought that, and I was also given a hint, that I should talk about the genesis of the IIEST system. When this committee, originally MHRD formed a committee with Professor Anand Krishnan and myself, this two-member committee, to look into a state
Please
of...
make it a little louder, please.
I cannot. I am very sorry. I think you may have to arrange your microphone. I cannot.
Yes, right. You set your microphone. We are actually, your voice is very clear, Amitabha.
So then what happened, I also requested MHRD that let us also invite Professor D.V. Singh, because D.V. Singh was the Vice Chancellor of Roorkee University when it got transferred to IIT Roorkee. So he was familiar with the transformation process. So finally, the committee had 3 members with Professor Anand Krishnan, my senior colleague at IIT Kanpur in the earlier times, myself and Professor D.V. Singh, and Professor Anand Krishnan was the convener. And we visited all the 7 institutions which are earmarked by the ministry for upgradation. Now remember, we mentioned this to whenever we visited people, we are not looking for upgradation of these institutes to IITs. Because now you know there are 23 or 24 IITs, you know. So the objective of creating a separate set of institutions, why it was so, I would like to primarily concentrate on that issue. And I hope that through that, it will be also closely linked with today's topic, at least not fully, but partially. And I hope that if there is any deficiency, you will excuse me. I would like to share my slides. That is the best way of presenting something in such a meeting. And if you allow me to share, I would like to share my screen. Can I share?
Please go ahead, Amitabha. No. We could see your screen. It says the WebEx, etc., etc.
হাসান, তুমি শেয়ার করে দেওয়ার চেষ্টা করো।
আমি প্রচুর মিটিং করি জুমে।
হ্যাঁ, Hasan, do you have the PowerPoint?
হ্যাঁ আছে। 1 second. Yes. Let me try.
না, ওই PowerPoint যেটা আমি পাঠিয়েছি আজকে সামাকে সেটা।
না, সেটাই Hasan, you must be having that.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Engineering and engineering education in 21st century.
No, actually IIST একটা আছে সুমন চক্রবর্তীর আর একটা আছে অমিতাভ দার।
এটা কেন দেখা যাচ্ছে? আমি দেখাচ্ছি এবার। Just a moment, let me show.
Yeah, why IIEST the future of Indian engineering education?
Okay, পেয়েছি।
Now let me share.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now can you see?
Yes.
Okay.
We see the very last slide, Amitabha.
Yeah, I think that is the best thing, because then you know that the thing is going to come to an end.
No, please go ahead.
There is an end. So I think the topic I chose is why IIEST, because that is the one thing which I am quite familiar with, and maybe you will be interested, and it is also related to the topic which you have all chosen. So, an answer to the question that why IIEST, that is today's topic, you will find it is linked with engineering and engineering education in the 21st century, repositioning of IIEST Shipur. And the prescribed sub-theme, which was given to me by Tathagata, Indian engineering education, balancing national interest and global competitiveness will be also addressed through these few slides to the extent possible. Now, to appreciate the future trend in engineering education, like we are talking about that, and their relevance to today's topic of discussion, it is desirable to have a quick overview of the process through which engineering education has evolved. You know, if you want to really project the future, you should also have some idea about the trend of the past. Then only you can project the future. কাজে আমি যেটা বলবো সেটা kindly you don't take it as a it is not exactly that. Maybe you will find it relevant. So first, let us have a look at the manner in which engineering subjects have emerged with the progress of basic science, basic and applied sciences. And তার চাইতে আগে যেটা আমরা দেখে নেব, that what are the correct meanings and implications when you use the terms science, engineering, and technology. Why I am telling this, it is confused like anything. Everybody uses engineering, technology, science in a way, and they mix them up without having a clear idea what are the distinctions between science, engineering, and technology, which is also important. And then you will also understand the name we have chosen, IIEST, why it is so. Now, the hierarchy is like that. First comes science, from there we come to engineering, and from there we go to technology. Now, what is science? Science, you know, it comes from the Latin word scientia, which means knowledge, knowing, creation of new knowledge. So therefore, science primarily aims at creating new knowledge by observing the nature. Engineering, on the other hand, it originates from the Latin word ingeniare, which means to innovate, to contrive, to devise, and such creations come directly from basic sciences. So you will see engineering is that using science and using your cleverness and do it or convert into a thing which is usable. And technology comes last. This word originates from the Greek word technologia, meaning systematic use of craft, art, etc. It is also related to Sanskrit word taksan, meaning carpenter. In Greek also, tekton means carpenter. So this is actually, once you have something which is usable, then using it in a different form for various practical purposes becomes technology. I think it will be better to give a quick example, then the idea will be clearer. So I will give a clear. So this example I will take as lasers. So like we know that science discovered a phenomena like spontaneous and stimulated emission. You all know that spontaneous emission means when an electron is at a higher energy state, it comes down and it emits an electron, and its frequency is suitable, or it is depending on the difference of energy. Later, these physicists discovered another phenomena which is called stimulated emission, that when an electron is at a higher energy state, and if you impinge it with an electron or a photon whose energy is exactly matching this difference, then it will also create exactly a similar photon which is coherent with this both in phase and therefore and frequency, and this is called stimulated emission. Now comes engineering. What engineers did actually, though he got Nobel Prize in physics, but actually the whole work was engineering. That what was done, you all know, there are two parallel mirrors, and once a photon is emitted, it goes back and forth, and by the process, it creates huge number of photons which are all coherent, exactly matching in frequency and phase, and ultimately a very strong coherent light comes out. So this whole process is basic idea is engineering. And then once you get that, a powerful light beam, in using it to various real life work like manufacturing, communication, material processing, etc., it is the activity we call technology. Like this, suppose you are using a laser beam for cutting or welding, that becomes technology. So there is a distinction between science, engineering, and technology you should keep in mind if you have to really discuss something very thoroughly about the education of these engineering, science, and technology. But technology, of course, is the driving force for the progress of the world economics, and I just show you how it has happened over the years. So you can see this is nothing, a particular index was chosen as the GDP of Eastern Europe. You see that how it changed over time. Then there was suddenly a jump in the slope. That is the phenomena which we call as first industrial revolution. Then there was another one. It happened here, which is we call the second industrial revolution around 1970, and you can see we are going like this. So therefore, these special events we call industrial revolutions, which brings paradigm shifts in our whole activities, all these spheres of life. And our point will be that this first industrial, why it happened. You all know that it happened when the world entered the era of industrialization, and which dominated the economy. Besides, the development of the concept and technology for mass production brought the fruits of industrialization within the reach of common man. Thus, industrial products entered our domestic confines, which was not earlier the case. The second industrial revolution took place in our lifetime, you all know, and the prime motivation for this came from the development of microelectronics, VLSI technology, and the concurrent development of computer and communication technology. And this induced the world to enter the era of knowledge-based society and the emergence of information technology as a major source of economic development. এটাতে কি হয়েছিল? প্রথমটার কারণটা ছিল having a prime mover. এটার কারণটা হলো the main whole thing at the root was miniaturization. That is VLSI technology, compacting millions of transistors in a centimeter square place. That was the real root cause of this particular revolution which took place. And now I think now let us have that the path taken along which the engineering and technology has evolved. So this, it will be easy for us to correlate this for the future. During the earliest stages, engineering was employed predominantly for developing devices for warfare. Only much later, it was felt to identify the areas of engineering activities for the civilian population, and civil engineering was created to distinguish it from military engineering. So therefore, in the 18th century or 16th century, 17th century, there are two branches of engineering, civil engineering and military engineering. And you know that other activities of engineering like mining, metallurgy, and civil engineering, they are continuing as the very important, very basic fundamental branches. But the military engineering, what happened to it, once the science started advancing and various new ideas and new discoveries are being made in science, they got proliferated into branches like electrical engineering, chemical engineering, electronics, computer engineering, communication engineering, aerospace engineering, biotechnology, and so on. So as science progressed, that we can see, as science progressed, military engineering started getting divided into many different branches as indicated in next slide. Now, you all know that civil engineering also now is getting divided into various branches like construction engineering and environmental engineering, global engineering, and such areas. Civil also started. But I think the proliferation was much more intensive in the case of military engineering. You can see originally we had mechanics and thermodynamics for mechanical. Then in the 19th century, electricity and magnetism was discovered and we got electrical engineering. Then in the 20th century, when quantum mechanics and modern physics came up, we got electronics. When adding that with mathematics, advanced mathematics, we got computer engineering and later communication engineering. Similarly, mechanical engineering with material science, then in chemistry, it got chemical engineering. Mechanical engineering also got divided into aerospace engineering. Chemistry and environmental engineering together, it has become environmental engineering. That life science also came later, much later entry, you can see that getting attached to chemical engineering gave rise to a branch like biotechnology. And also slowly we are having more different branches of it. Now, it is obvious that not only the characters of various current branches of engineering will continue to get transformed as science continues its journey with time, That means we have to look into it, what is going to happen in the next 100 years or next 50 years at least. Now, so the current branches will also get mutated into different forms, and also new branches of engineering and technology will emerge. And that may bring major paradigm shifts as explained in the following few slides. Many experts believe that we are almost at the doorstep of another industrial revolution, the third industrial revolution. In the second industrial revolution, it was the miniaturization at the two-dimensional level of electronics. But third industrial revolution will be created by miniaturization at the three-dimensional level. That means your devices, machines, everything is going to be miniaturized to the smallest possible level. Like motors will be of the level of molecules. They will be our motors in the future. And also, you will find that we have started getting it, the triplet merger of engineering science with life science. An example, I'll say, a new area of R&D has already started raising its head, that is called synthetic biology. In synthetic biology, what happens that we create devices, artificial devices, machines, and they possess a number of characteristics of living entities. That means they can get produced automatically through self-assembly, just like a living object. They will have many other things, like they will use energy, like say energy of photosynthesis. So that, they will have, that means they will create their own biochemical energy within themselves and use sun rays to produce the energy. These have already started happening. And furthermore, the machines, devices, and processes will become far more intelligent and autonomous to a level beyond our imagination. So a possible route to the impending third industrial revolution and India's preparedness, you consider achieving 8 capabilities that will lead the world towards the third industrial revolution, we can summarize as this. These are the primarily basic issues which we are going to take us to that. Miniaturization, materials, all smart materials, smart molecules, they will also come emerging. Energy will go to energy, like even photosynthesis will become a major energy source. Intelligence and automation, fabrication and self-assembly, self-correction. Machines will be able to correct themselves any mistake. They will learn also automatically, self-learn. Ultimately, self-replication, like living objects. These are gradually going to take the center stage one by one, and our next industrial revolution will be in India. You can see, just one example I'll show you quickly how it is happening. Still, it is only the present situation, but the future is different. So I will plot one by size in one horizontal and degree of automation and intelligence in the vertical direction. Now you can see one by size means as it becomes smaller and smaller, it goes in this direction. As something becomes more and more intelligent, it goes in this direction. So what is the current status? Current status, an intelligent machine like a CNC machine like this is there, but it is already showing that direction. It is going to micro machines, micro automatic computer-based machines. And ultimately, we have already started getting some idea. People have started using it. It's molecular motors. That means these motors are of the level of, they're composed of molecules, like your ATP synthase and such things. On the other hand, it becomes more and more intelligent, like Mars, Land Rover, etc. They are more autonomous and ultimately autonomous humanoid robots. And there are developments in which both are happening together. It is becoming smaller and also more intelligent. That means a combination of these two, we are getting intelligent, autonomous micro robots. Like these micro robots have been sent inside your veins and arteries, and they are doing all kinds of manipulations with the blood corpuscles, and they can go do many things within our body. So that is another thing which is already has started happening. The impact of miniaturization on various aspects of futuristic systems, first will be configuration and design will completely change. Most of them will be monolithic. Just forget about the assembly. There will be no concept of assembly in future. Materials will change. not these conventional materials like metals and alloys, such things. And actuation will be just like our muscles, the sensing and control will change. Sensing and control will be completely distributed all over the devices. And fabrication and manufacturing, as I mentioned, one major way of change will come in bottom-up approach. That means now we take a piece of metal, cut it, remove some part and give a shape. In future, they will take atom by atom and create a particular shape. That is called bottom-up manufacturing. And it will also happen automatically. You don't have to do it. Just like the baby grows in mother's womb, just from one cell, trillions of cells, same kind of things are going to be achieved by engineers for fabrication of futuristic devices. And energy sources, there will be drastic changes in the source of energy which we will be having in future. Now, one thing I must mention that don't think that everything is going to change. Our locomotive engines are going to remain as it is and their production method. But as now the technology is driven by microelectronics and computers, similarly after third industrial revolution, these are the things which will drive the economy. Our existing things will continue. The aeroplane will not be miniaturized, obviously. So those things will continue, but new things which will come, that will be the prime mover or rather the dominant forces for the future of the economy. And intelligent systems major characteristics will depend on massively parallel arrangement of miniaturized devices, like your muscle. Your muscle is not a just block of protein. It is very finely distributed but packed. So this massive parallelism is the arrangement in which all engineers are going, but then you are going to really mimic the living organizations, which is the ultimate goal, because nature is the best engineer. And this is done not only to make the information collection ability more, but also to take advantage of the scaling laws, which of course I cannot take time to discuss here. And the major impacts of the above requirements will lead to a number of very fundamental changes in the concept of future engineering, as shown in the next slide. How our futuristic engineering discipline will change. Just try to show that in design, these are the things which are going to happen. In fabrication, these are the things which are going to take place. And in operation, these will be the premier objectives. And in energy, these are going to be the situation. So these are in the direction we are moving. We have achieved success in some, and we have not yet achieved success in some. But these are the directions in which our engineering advancement is going along. So obviously, you understand our academic education also gradually change itself to cope up with these things. It is not possible to forecast the various collateral changes in the world due to the third industrial revolution. But just consider one impact of synthetic biology as an example. If a large section of the future machines use solar energy and the mechanism of photosynthesis, the impact on the environment will be truly wonderful. All these machines and devices will produce oxygen instead of carbon dioxide. And this is just one example I'm telling how things are going to completely change in future with these drastically or most fundamental changes or transformation of the concept. Another major area in which the impact will be felt, it has already started being felt, is the healthcare and future medical science. Technology is going to play an extremely important role. One should also remember that another major area which will require many new disciplines of engineering and technology to be developed is space science and technology. And the futuristic discipline of space science and technology is going to make a major impact on engineering education. Since India has plans to become one of the major countries involved in this area, the engineering education in India has to be oriented along the requirement. Also, I'll tell you, being a teacher from IIT system for a very long time, the distortions, you see, all our aeronautical engineering departments have been renamed as aerospace engineering. But you go to ISRO, they will tell they are hardly of any use, particularly when it goes to space. So all the curriculum has remained, even our BE college, we have created an aeronautical and aerospace engineering. or rather aerospace engineering, there is very little in space. People are still continuing with the old things which they are familiar with. So therefore, it is important that we have to change our academic system and curriculum both. Now, as I mentioned here, the responsibility of the major science and technological institutions of India require them to keep abreast with these changes and redesign the various curricula. Only then our country will be able to face the challenges of the impending third industrial revolution, and India will not be compelled to be a silent bystander. And the trend of the progress of engineering is depicted in the following slides. Quickly, I will show you in a symbolic fashion. What will happen? These are the traditional engineering subjects which we have. What is going to happen? Mathematics and computation for extensive simulation and modeling will come. Why? Because when you go for very miniaturized system, you cannot do experiments with them. It will be not possible to do such things in laboratory. All those experiments will be done through extensive simulation of a level which you cannot imagine now. And mathematics and computation for such things will be a major thing, simulation and modeling. Then physics will become a major player, chemistry will come as a major player, and finally, life science also will come as a major player. They will all get mixed up to give the shape of our future engineering career. Now, what will be the basic components of engineering and technology to achieve success in this? The next slide shows in a diagrammatic fashion quickly. I will show just. So, these are the 5 basic things which will create the futuristic engineering. One is miniaturization, massive parallelism, bottom-up fabrication and self-assembly based mass manufacturing, and embedded biochemical energy source and control electronics. Along with that, smart materials. Majority of the materials which you use for devices will become smart, will respond to various kinds of stimuli. All these 5 features will ultimately create what we call or what we indicate as. What happened? So, thus it is clear that India is going to need substantial workforce trained in the advanced and futuristic areas of engineering and technology. Then only the country can be a major center-stage player in world economics, as we are planning. Unfortunately, there is a trend of not pursuing higher engineering education among the meritorious students. It's a very serious problem. Hardly will find any IIT graduate is going for MTech degrees or PhD degrees. So why that is happening? It's a major socio-economic problem, and it has to be as that. And thus, it is essential to think of a system that will generate suitable manpower with capabilities and futuristic engineering. To create such new generation engineering and technical manpower, it is necessary to introduce modern administrative structures so that these institutions can function with freedom and speed. Conventional register-centric system cannot deliver the desired results. It is guaranteed. So this realization led to the concept of developing a new set of engineering institutions, Indian Institute of Engineering Science and Technology. It should be noted that there is no comma between the words engineering and science. It is often mistaken as people read as Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology. No, it is Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology. And the implications are very clear to you, I believe. And also for this reason, these IISTs are expected to become predominantly postgraduate institutions imparting dual degree programs leading to masters and doctorate. Then only research will take actually a major strength. Any further discussion, as I mentioned earlier, is beyond the scope of this presentation, but it has been attempted to provide a glimpse to the expected paradigm changes in science and technology, leading to the impending third industrial revolution. And the third industrial revolution will change the society to a level that is the imaginations of the science fiction. You know, we know that's how it changes quickly. In 1980s or late 80s, nobody could think of, even the science fiction writers, something like mobile phone or internet. Within 2 decades, it has become inseparable parts of our daily. Now, it may not happen tomorrow, but India should take initial preparatory actions so that it does not again miss the center stage role when the world faces the onslaught of this. The concept of a chain of postgraduate institutions for advanced engineering, science, and technology led to the recommendation for setting up the IIESTs by the MHRD committee. Fortunately, our alma mater was chosen to be the first among these, but unfortunately, the transformation of GAABESU into IIST is far from complete, and certain fundamental issues related to the academic programs and R&D activities need to be addressed. Frankly speaking, it has not at all been transformed. Except the retirement age and salary level, nothing has changed. Many thanks for your kind attention. If you have questions, you can discuss later. I must stop. Thank you.
অমিতাভ দা, আমি পার্থ বলছি।
বলো।
আচ্ছা, দুটো কোয়েশ্চেন আছে। একটা হচ্ছে এই স্মার্ট মেটেরিয়াল আপনি যেটা বললেন, এটার মধ্যে কতটা র মেটেরিয়াল আর কতটা হিউম্যান মেড মেটেরিয়াল, যে স্মার্ট মেটেরিয়াল তৈরি করার জন্য। আর সেকেন্ড পয়েন্টটা বলছি, সেকেন্ডটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের এই লাইফ সাইকেল যেটা বলছিলেন, এটা জিন এবং জিন থেরাপি, ম্যাক্সিমাম ডিজিজ তো জিন থেকে হচ্ছে। জিন এবং জিন থেরাপির এই দুটো পয়েন্ট যদি একটু আপনি স্লাইটলি এক্সপ্যান্ড করেন। আমি জানি টাইমটা শর্ট।
অমিতাভ দা, একটা রিকোয়েস্ট করবো আপনাকে, প্লিজ। মানে কোশ্চেনটা একটু মাথায় রাখুন, if we could revisit at the end of the session, because there are few more speakers that we.
I know, that's what I was saying, that I would like to respond to it. Now other speakers must speak, then only you will get a complete picture. I have given only one story, my story as a member of that committee, that's all.
So that was really good. Thank you so much.
And Partho, for the clarity of others, if you please type it out in the chat, that will be for record. And if we cannot accommodate that during the session, I am sure Professor Ghosh will take it on at a later time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Amitabha da. Thanks a lot. So now I would like to invite Shri Amitabha Bhattacharya to come on and share his experience and thought process on this topic. Amitabha da, please. Amitabha da, you are muted. We cannot hear you.
Please let me know how much time is allotted to me.
We do. Please carry on. Thank you.
How much time should I speak? That is 10 minutes or how much?
15 at the top.
Pardon?
15 minutes, please.
Okay. 15 minutes is on the high side. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, I must thank GAABESU for having invited me to be a part of this panel discussion. And I am immensely benefited by the initial introductory presentation by our most distinguished teacher, Professor Amitabha Ghosh. We stand enormously benefited, and there is nothing more that anybody else can add, perhaps, on this particular subject. I am also thankful to Professor Tathagata Ray, the moderator, Professor Indranil, Manna, and other distinguished panelists. Now, I am slightly different from the other panelists in the sense that out of my career from 1971 to when I passed out to 2014,
louder.
I have spent.
Nothing is audible.
Is it not audible?
Louder.
Okay.
I think
your voice is clearly audible. There may be some problem in the.
I spent at the most a quarter of my 40 plus years of service career dealing with subjects of engineering and technical education. Therefore, I am not an expert in that particular field, and there are far better experts who are present here who would be sharing their perspectives. But having worked in the government for more than 3 decades, I know how the government functions. And it's a perspective from another angle that I'm trying to share with you. Now, I must also say that I have written down what I wanted to say, and that has been published in the last week's Statesman on Saturday and Sunday under the title Success Engineered. The title has been given by the editor, and that's likely to be published with slight modification in the GAABESU journal also. Therefore, for details, one can look into that. I have based my talk on the basis of 2-3 documents. One is the National Education Policy 2020, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, of which one, number 4, relates to technical education quality or education equality. And the third is the draft STIP, Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. Unfortunately, it is still under finalization. Therefore, I can't discuss much about it publicly, although I know about it. The other thing is that I had a long discussion with Mr. Punia, the Vice Chairman of the All India Council of Technical Education, and certain other officials of Government of India, now retired, who kept briefing me about some of the points that I would be unleashing now. And I must make it clear that all that I'm going to say is my personal perspective. It is not what it need not necessarily be what the government thinks or so. The first is how I see the contours of technical education, higher technical education in the country changing over the next years. Presuming that an education policy would have a life of about 30 years or so based on past experience, we can think in terms of that. What changes we are going to expect in the technical education sector in the country. And I would concentrate or touch upon only 3 issues. One is on the funding issue. The second is on the concept of multilingualism, which has been highlighted in this particular national education policy, and in certain states things are being pushed pretty hard. And the third is about the future orientation. We must remember that BE College essentially was a good, competent teaching institution. Once it got evolved into a deemed university, then an institute of national importance, its character has also been quietly changing. Now, I would also touch upon that, whether it can continue its character or it has to be very substantially changed into a research and innovation university. The first is about the funding. Now, the NEP says very clearly that the object is to have higher education funding to 6% of our GDP. And if we look at the past trends, we can see very, very roughly, rule of the thumb, about 1/3 of Government of India's, 1/3 of India's public expenditure on education is spent on higher education, and approximately 2/3 on the school and secondary education. I hope this trend would continue with a slight change, because the NEP makes it out very clearly that the highest priority would be given to foundational literacy and numeracy. That being so, we can expect that first is the current expenditure both by the state and the central governments combined comes to about 4.42 or 4.45%. But to make it into 6% of the GDP is going to take a long time. It's not going to happen very shortly. I wish I am wrong, but the trend shows that it's not going to take place very shortly. And out of that, if only 1/3 comes to higher education, and out of that, if even a particular percentage comes to higher technical education, and if we take into consideration the fact that a large number of IITs have been set up in the last couple of decades, there's been huge expansion of higher technical education. My worry is that the funding would not be as adequate as would be needed to meet the newer challenges. I mean, funding means public funding. Therefore, government or public funding has to be very substantially supplemented by other sources. Now, one thing is that funding does not necessarily mean funding from the Ministry of Education itself, which was earlier known as Ministry of HRD. Funding for technical institutions would come from various sources. The National Research Foundation has been set up. Department of Science and Technology is also going to increasingly provide more funding for research and innovation areas insofar as higher education institutions are concerned. Therefore, first thing is, are we getting ready? Because as Professor Ghosh has very correctly mentioned, there is enormous flexibility needed to develop courses, curriculum, and other sorts of things. That being so, the institutions has to be autonomous. It should have enough flexibility and freedom. They have also to be ready for that, in the sense that much of the resources in the next 20, 25 or 30 years have to come from sources other than the government. Now, this is one major challenge that I wanted to highlight. The second issue is about the multilingualism. Now, one very good aspect of the national education policy is its stress on this. But it also stresses, insofar as technical education is concerned, that there has to be internationalization also. Now, these seem to be a trend which are not exactly compatible. Insofar as technical educations are concerned, especially in an institution like IIEST or the national institutions, to what extent multilingualism can be adopted in a short run is a very, very major issue. In state engineering colleges or private colleges where, say, about 90% of the students speak the same kind of local language, instruction in or examination in local language can be considered as an addition to English. But insofar as national institutions are concerned, we have to always keep IIEST in mind. We have to tread very, very cautiously and carefully. There has been a study, which I can't quote because it is not in still public domain, that AICTE introduced a kind of study by the Stanford University, which compared students from India, China, and Russia. The results I am not going to discuss much because it can create different kinds of controversies. But the point is that students in India, for example, have been found lacking compared to the students, their counterparts in Russia and China, insofar as the higher level thinking and innovation skills are concerned. Part of the reason, of course, is attributed to the fact that they write or are examined in a language which is different from their mother tongues. Therefore, the presumption was that if an alternative is given to those, especially first generation learners, they may be in a position to think better. Now, this is an issue which is important, which has to be embraced. And I think that in fact, AICTE has already done a lot of work in getting first year and second year engineering books translated into certain regional languages. Now, my caution is that we should be a little circumspect. We should think that it's a good idea. But insofar as professional engineering education is concerned, and that too at national institutions, to what extent that should be pushed and how fast is something to be seriously thought of. The third issue that I would like to flag is about research orientation. This is the point that I had mentioned earlier. The BE College has been an excellent college. We had great teachers, we had great researchers also, but a culture of research was yet to take shape here. Now, the moment it becomes an institution of national importance, this becomes important. I remember the problems that were being faced when the college, was made into an IIEST, that many of the, some of them distinguished teachers also didn't have PhD qualification. Now, this importance on PhD and importance on publications, these are going to be increasingly important in the years to come. Therefore, the IIEST in the years to come has to reposition itself more into, or as much as a research and innovation university as a teaching university. Now, this is something for which, as I had mentioned in my paper also, that we expect the supplemental funding would be coming from sources like the National Research Foundation or the Department of Science and Technology. Now, these are 3 or 4 broad areas which I had flagged in my paper, which I had discussed also a little now. Now, insofar as coming to IIEST is concerned, I had gone through its gradual decline in position. From 2017, it was 17 in rank, and 2022, it has become 40. Now, in 2021 also, the rank was 27. But what appears as a sudden drop or a major decline is not necessarily corroborated by the marks obtained insofar as NIRF ranking is concerned. I understand that any ranking methodology can be questioned, but here we see, for example, how sensitive these two are. When in 2019, when our rank was 19, the total marks obtained by IIEST was 56.35. And 2022, when it is 40, the marks are 54.57. Therefore, less than 2 marks, but the ranking has come down from 19 to 40. This means on all the issues, for example, for those who may not know, I just want to mention which are the areas, for example, how the NIRF ranking is. First is testing, learning, and resources. 0.3 is the weight. Research and professional practice 0.3 or 30% weightage. Graduation outcomes weightage is 20%. Outreach and inclusivity 10%, and perception 10%. Now, this is the pattern. We can question on this pattern, but insofar as this pattern is concerned, we have to now think how best even a 0.1 or 0.2% increase in each of them is going to make a substantial difference. One major problem that IIEST is facing now, and this is being very important, one may ask why suddenly things have gone wrong. It's not so. After it was converted to IIEST, the professors' retirement age was increased from 60 to 65 years. Therefore, in those 5 years, there was hardly any retirement. Therefore, at the same time, the student intake has been increasing, or approved strength of student intake has also been increasing. Consequently, the faculty-student ratio has been coming down. Now, this has got to be reversed. I am told actions are being taken to recruit new faculty. It should be good. I also expect the authorities to consider what the UGC has been prescribing for engineering education is professors of practice. If we do not have adequate number of people with doctorate and other kinds of qualification, how people from the industry can be inducted as professors of practice to make up this gap. The second is the quality of research output. Research culture has to develop and research quality has to improve. Obviously, it's needed. There is another problem of the ratio between approved student strength and the admitted ones, especially for MTech courses. The fee and other things have increased here, very substantially over the years, whereas it has not happened in Jadavpur and other places. Therefore, in MTech, I am told many of the students leave immediately after taking admission into IIEST to Jadavpur and other places. It may be correct or may not be wholly correct. But the point is, this is a major issue. And in the postgraduate courses like mining or even metallurgy, it is difficult to get MTech students. Now, there should be some kind of flexibility, and Government of India should also be induced to think that accordingly, the intake or the approved strength in certain disciplines, especially at the postgraduate level, should be reduced. Now, these are areas where work has got to be done, but these are not areas where a miracle can happen overnight. There is no purpose blaming a single individual or single system for this. We have to all work together and ensure that how things improve. As an alumnus, of course, I can dream big. Therefore, in my paper, I had argued that while the short-term goal in the next 5 years should be to position IIEST within the top 10 or 15 of the institutions in India after the first generation IITs and maybe a few NITs. But the medium term, actually it should be a long-term goal, but I have used the term medium as a biased alumnus. The goal should be to convert it into IIT Shibpur. Now, the reason I have argued for IIT Shibpur is this. First, of course, subject to many conditions. The state government has to agree that 50% quota has to be dispensed with. The Government of India has to agree. IIT Act has to be amended. NIT-ACR Act has to be amended. There are many ifs and buts in between. But that should be, I think, our goal, because the IIT's brand name is helping even the second or third later IITs. Now, the reason I am saying this is this. The first is the purpose for which, as Professor Amitabha Ghosh has very correctly explained, purpose with which IIEST was set up, that it should have dual degrees, a BTech, MTech, and not terminal BTech degrees, has been diluted. Now, one can have BTech degree and one can exercise a choice whether to pursue BTech and MTech. Therefore, the distinctive feature with which IIEST was set up, and the reason why only Shibpur continues to be the IIEST, not Cochin and other places, is perhaps this. They understood this. Therefore, my point is that that goal has been partly diluted. The second thing was, I remember when there was the talk of Shibpur being upgraded to the level of IITs, there was a point that no state, there are many states which didn't have IITs, therefore one state should not have two. Now we know that now that BHU has been upgraded to IIT BHU and Varanasi and IIT Kanpur, there are two. Therefore, there is a precedence in Government of India. Thirdly, once it is an institute of national importance, upgrading it to an IIT would require some additional fund, perhaps to meet the IIT norms. And fourthly, one major issue which we have all been discussing and which the NIP has stressed upon is also the fact that it is not only interdepartment, multidisciplinarity so far as science and engineering and technologies are concerned, as Professor Ghosh has mentioned. It is also the case that where the humanities and other social sciences have also to be integrated with engineering education. And Shibpur being near Calcutta, and Calcutta having had a very strong tradition, a good tradition insofar as humanities, social sciences, and related subjects are concerned, can have ideal stuff to make IIEST in I would say 7 to 10 years time into an IIT. And that it's not an empty dream. And I'm sure GAABESU, if it positions itself working well with the IIEST authorities and provides such support as needed by the IIEST, it should be demand or need driven by the IIEST, which should be identified by the IIEST authorities. And if the GAABESU helps in doing that, publicizes the good points so that the perception or the image of the institution also improves, I think it is not a very difficult, it's not an impossible dream to be achieved in next 7 or 10 years. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amitabha. Tathagata, you are on mute.
Our next speaker, Biman.
Yeah, we could invite Gautam.
Right. Now, before that, actually, in between when Professor Amitabha Ghosh completed his speech, I had just taken off to answer a call of nature. That is not a thing that could be abridged by the third industrial revolution. So such things are going to happen. I would just like to comment one thing about Professor Amitabha Ghosh's lecture. It is just mind-boggling. I mean, the picture that he has given of the future, the sort of thing that we will possibly come across in the future, is something that really unhinges you. Very difficult to imagine such things. Just as in the 60s and 70s, it was very difficult to imagine a cell phone or even something like numerical control of machines. Today, we find it very difficult. But Amitabha Ghosh, Professor Amitabha Ghosh, being the brilliant person that he is, he has opened out this window for us, and we are all grateful to him. Mr. Amitabha Bhattacharya has given us a completely different perspective, which is not available with most engineers. That is the administrative perspective of bringing about any kind of change. It is, we can always talk about making IIEST into an IIT or IIT into an IIEST, or changing the college to an IIT, that sort of thing. But the hurdles that exist in our country, the bureaucratic hurdles, legislative hurdles, all these things have to be addressed. There is no getting away from it. And that is one thing that Mr. Amitabha Bhattacharya made clear. Now, who's our next speaker, Biman?
Our next speaker is Gautam Ray.
Right. Is Gautam around?
Yeah.
So you can start, Gautam. Floor is yours.
Good evening to you all. In fact, it is very difficult for me to say something within this galaxy of very, very senior academicians, respected academic administrators. It is very, I would say that I would just bring a few points only on industry perspective and what is my experience of working in an organization close to IIEST. And I happen to be a regular recruiter of IIEST for more than last 12, 13 years. Fundamentals, I also have the same opinion and view that the very commonly said that what is taught in the institution is not required in the industry. I am not a believer of that. Whatever the change can take place, but the fundamentals, basic physics of engineering will be required. But what is happening in the recent past, in the industrial perspective, technology alone is not changing. It's an ecosystem. Why I am telling? You will find all the major industries are going through organic change. which includes the structural changes. High level of automations are being practiced everywhere. There are some regulatory and statutory frameworks which are becoming very, very predominant. And the whole approach is now customer-centric. Earlier, we have seen, in the case of my industry, the electricity industry, the actually energy flows from the source to the customers. I cannot tell that it has got a reversal, but now the whole process of optimization, whole process of delivery, whole process of reliability and resilience are being driven and governed by the customer wish and will, and rightly so. So, the industry drivers, what are the drivers for the industry today? Why I am telling that if we consider that the ultimate objective is, of course, one way is a macro level to serve the nation, societal development, yes. But if the medium and micro level objective is to serve the industry, then we have to also understand where we are in the industry. I have spoken about the societal orientation. You all know that today, Professor probably Ghosh was mentioning about the sustainability agenda. I also happened to be, I attended the COP26 in Glasgow in November. And I found the huge amount of commitment by all the head of the state. And whether we like, we do not like, but we have to move towards that direction. And this sustainability is not pure play engineering services. Whatever my understanding goes, is much more larger perspective we are talking about. ESG is a subject in the company board now by regulation, environment, social governance, risk management, cyber security. These are the areas, cost leadership. Why I am mentioning this? I do not know how it to be dovetailed with the engineering curriculum and education. But frankly speaking, if we do not touch base, if we do not incorporate, if we do not really take care of those, I do not know how much the ultimate products will be contextual and contemporary. Now, so in each and every industry, I find the competitive cutting edge is the knowledge management. And knowledge management is a subject by itself, be it in the form of the innovation and knowledge portals. Maybe we have also some of the experimentations we are going. In some cases, we are getting results also. But this multi-skilling and continuously necessity of reskilling and upskilling. I give you an example that when I was there in the middle of my career, I often tell these, almost all the substations of our distribution company was manned 24/7. Now none of the substations are manned. And how are we operating that? It is only through automation. Now the same workforce who say joined 20 years back, how they will be contemporary to the technological changes, what is happening. This requires for each industry, if they really want to be in the line, they have to have a huge infrastructure and framework of upskilling and reskilling their own manpower. Why I am telling this? Time has come to think whether an engineering education, I'm speaking the bachelor's, I'm not really going, I do not have any idea about the higher research, but time has come to think whether it is a terminal process or the so-called industry-university interactions should be a continual process, should have a handshaking at every phase of life. If the universities can be utilized as a resource for such upskilling and reskilling And it's not a training, quote unquote, which we consider as an industry man. And it's not a low technology I am speaking of. Huge level of R&D will be required. And how really universities can be contemporary to that, that is the call of the day. I will little come into the context why I am